The barrel of a service pistol has a terrifying way of clarifying your priorities. 10 minutes ago, I was only worrying about probate notices. Now, with 3 squad cars boxing me against the highway guardrail and an officer screaming at me to show my hands, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. As the cold metal of handcuffs clicked against my wrists, I understood that my sister hadn't just reported my car stolen, she had finally declared war. The heavy oak door of Harrow Lyle Fiduciary Services clicked shut behind me, severing the hushed, air-conditioned silence of the lobby from the humid afternoon heat of Briar Glen. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, shifting the weight of the canvas tote bag on my shoulder. It felt heavier than it had when I walked in. Though the only physical additions were a manila folder stuffed with probate notices and a small, rusted biscuit tin my grandmother had kept hidden in the back of her linen closet, I adjusted my grip on the bag. The meeting with the temporary administrator had been polite, precise, and entirely suffocating. They spoke of my grandmother, Eleanor, as if she were a column of figures to be balanced, not a woman who had taught me how to plant hydrangeas and hold my ground. 33 years of memories were being liquidated into cash values and distribution charts. I walked to my car, a silver sedan that had seen better days but was reliably mine, or so I thought. I tossed the bag onto the passenger seat, the metal tin clinking against the seatbelt buckle. Grandma had been specific about that tin. Open this only if it gets ugly. Ari, she had whispered 2 weeks before the stroke that finally took her. At the time, I had dismissed it as the paranoia of a woman whose mind was fraying at the edges. Now, after the cold reception at the fiduciary firm and the evasive text messages from my sister, Mallory, the tin felt less like a keepsake and more like a shield. I keyed the ignition. The engine hummed to life, a familiar sound that usually settled my nerves. I needed to get back to the city, back to my apartment, back to a place where I was Ariana James, pediatric speech therapist, and not Ariana James, the black sheep of a family that only valued compliance. The drive toward the highway was autopilot. I merged onto Interstate 71, keeping pace with the flow of mid-afternoon traffic. My mind drifted to the list of tasks ahead. Notify the utility companies, cancel the subscription services, figure out why Mallory had stopped answering my calls about the memorial service flowers. I checked my rearview mirror. A black and white cruiser was 2 cars back. My heart gave a reflexive little jump, the standard guilt of the innocent driver. But I checked my speedometer. I was going exactly 65. I stayed in the right lane, signaling carefully as I passed an exit ramp. The cruiser moved closer. Then the lights flickered on. Blue and red strobes bounced off my mirrors, blindingly bright even in the daylight. I sighed, tapping the brakes and easing toward the shoulder. A broken taillight. Maybe an expired tag I had forgotten. I ran through the mental checklist of mundane infractions as I brought the car to a halt on the gravel strip. I put the car in park and reached for my purse to grab my license. Driver, put your hands out the window now. The voice did not come from a friendly officer walking up to my window. It came from a PA system, booming and distorted, vibrating through the glass. I froze. My hand hovered over my bag. Hands out the window now, panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I looked in the side mirror. The officer was not approaching. He was crouching behind his open door, his weapon drawn and leveled at my rear windshield. My breath hitched. I slowly, trembling, raised my hands and pushed them through the open window, spreading my fingers wide. "Do not move," the voice roared. Another siren wailed from the north, then another. Within 90 seconds, 2 more squad cars screeched to a halt in front of me, boxing me in against the guardrail. They parked at aggressive angles, tires turned, creating a barricade. I was shaking so hard my teeth clicked together. This was a mistake. This was a massive, terrifying mistake. Exit the vehicle. Slowly walk backwards, toward the sound of my voice. I fumbled for the door handle with my right hand. Keeping my left visible, I pushed the door open with my shoulder and stepped out onto the gravel. The rush of passing semi-trucks blasted me with hot wind and grit. Hands on your head. Interlace your fingers. I did as I was told. Tears pricked my eyes. Hot and stinging. I am Ariana James. I thought frantically. I am a speech therapist. I have never even had a speeding ticket. Please, I whispered, though they couldn't hear me over the highway noise. Please check the license plate. It is my car. I walked backward, my heels stumbling on the uneven stones. A rough hand grabbed my wrist, then the other. My arms were wrenched down, and I felt the cold, biting snap of handcuffs ratcheting tight against the delicate bones of my wrists. Ariana James, a voice barked close to my ear. Yes, I choked out. Yes, that is me. What is happening? Why are you doing this? You are under arrest for grand theft auto and possession of stolen property. The officer spun me around. He was young, his face flushed with adrenaline. He looked at me not as a confused woman, but as a threat neutralized. That is my car, I said, my voice rising an octave. The title is in my name. It is in the glove box. Just look in the glove box. He ignored me, marching me toward the back of the cruiser. As he pushed my head down to safeguard it against the doorframe, I saw the line of traffic crawling past in the left lane, faces pressed against windows, phones held up, recording. I saw a teenage girl in a passenger seat pointing at me, her phone camera steady. I was going to be on the internet. They shoved me into the hard plastic back seat. The cage separated me from the front, a mesh of steel and plexiglass that smelled of stale sweat and disinfectant. I leaned my forehead against the glass, trying to breathe through the hyperventilation that was clawing at my throat. I had a history of panic attacks. The last one had been 3 years ago. After a hydroplaning accident on this very highway, I had worked so hard to get back behind the wheel. The radio crackled in the front seat. Subject is secured, the officer said into the receiver. 1 female, no weapons found on person. Clearing the vehicle now. Copy that, dispatch replied. Reporting party advised subject is armed and unstable. Proceed with caution. The words hit me like a physical blow. Armed and unstable. Those were not generic police codes. That was a specific narrative. Unstable. That was the word my mother used when I refused to sweep problems under the rug. That was the word Mallory used when I cried at my father's funeral because I was the only one who hadn't been medicated into numbness. Who reported it? I asked, my voice trembling. Who called it in? The officer in the driver's seat glanced at me in the rearview mirror. He seemed slightly less tense now that I was caged. He tapped on his laptop screen. Owner of the vehicle, Mallory James. The world tilted on its axis. No, I said. No, that is impossible. Mallory is my sister, but she does not own the car. I bought it 5 years ago. I paid it off last month. System shows a flag, the officer said. Indifferent. Report filed this morning. Stolen vehicle. Suspect is family member. Potential flight risk. History of mental instability. I closed my eyes. It wasn't just a report. It was a weapon. Mallory knew about the accident. She knew how hard I had fought to drive again without shaking. She knew that if police approached me with guns drawn, I wouldn't just be scared. I would look guilty because I would be terrified out of my mind. She had swatted me like a fly, using the state of Ohio as the fly swatter. The police station was a blur of fluorescent lights and humiliation. I was fingerprinted, my hands pressed onto the digital scanner by a clerk who looked bored. They took my photo. They took my shoelaces. I sat in a holding cell for 3 hours. Every time the door opened, I jumped. Finally, a detective entered. He was older, weary, carrying a clipboard. He sat on the metal bench opposite me. Your sister is declining to press charges for the theft, he said. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Because it is not theft. It is my car. She says you can pick up the car from the impound lot once the ownership dispute is settled in probate. He continued, ignoring my correction. However, we have another problem. He slid a piece of paper across the metal table. It was a photocopy of an inventory list. The report alleges you used the vehicle to transport stolen estate property, specifically jewelry and financial documents belonging to the estate of Eleanor Vance. I have my grandmother's biscuit tin, I said, feeling the absurdity of the words, and some probate notices, that is all. This inventory list says otherwise, the detective said. It lists a diamond brooch and a bearer bond, and it has your signature acknowledging receipt of these items yesterday. I looked at the paper. At the bottom, there was a scrawl that read, Ariana James. It was looped and slanted. It looked like my signature, to a stranger, but the J was wrong. I crossed my J at the top. This one was uncrossed. I did not sign this, I said, my voice hardening. That is a forgery. The detective looked at me, then at the paper. He didn't look convinced. He looked like a man who wanted to go home for dinner. That is a matter for the courts, he said. Since the complaining witness isn't pressing charges on the car, you are free to go, but the estate property remains in evidence until the executor clears it. We are keeping the tin. You can't, I said. She wanted me to have it. It is evidence, Ms. James. You can go. I walked out of the station into the twilight, missing my shoelaces, my phone battery at 4%, and my dignity entirely stripped away. I called Jenna. Jenna Rowe was the only person in the world I trusted implicitly. We had started at the Crestline Pediatric Speech Center on the same day 6 years ago. She answered on the first ring. Ari, where have you been? I've been texting you for hours. Jenna, I said, and my voice cracked. I need a ride. I am at the police station. 20 minutes later, Jenna's beat-up Honda Civic pulled up to the curb. She didn't ask questions. She just got out, wrapped her arms around me, and held me while I shook. Get in, she said fiercely. I have chocolate, and I have heated seats. Once we were moving, the silence of the car felt safe. I told her everything. The guns, the handcuffs, Mallory's name on the report, the forgery. Jenna listened, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. When I finished, she didn't say, "Oh, that's terrible." She said, "Grab my phone. Look at your work email." Why? I asked, a fresh wave of nausea rolling over me. Just look. I unlocked her phone and opened the app. There was an email in my inbox, flagged as high priority. It was from the center's HR director, copied to the board. Subject regarding recent allegations. Dear Ariana, we have received an anonymous complaint regarding an active police investigation involving theft and fraud. While we value your privacy, Crestline serves vulnerable populations, and we must take all reports seriously. Please contact us immediately to discuss your status pending an internal review. I dropped the phone in my lap. It was sent 2 hours ago, Jenna said quietly. Right after you were pulled over. Whoever did this, Ari, they didn't just want to scare you. They wanted to nuke your life. It was Mallory, I whispered. She knew exactly where I was. She knew I was leaving the fiduciary. She timed it. Why? Jenna asked. Why would your own sister do this? Because, I said, staring out the window at the passing strip malls. Grandma left something behind, and Mallory is terrified I'm going to find it. The next morning, I was sitting in the office of Elliot Marsh. Jenna had found him. He wasn't a high-powered probate shark. He was a criminal defense attorney who worked out of a converted townhouse near the courthouse. His office smelled of coffee and old leather. Elliot listened to my story without interrupting. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, his brow furrowed. Here is the thing. Ariana, he said, leaning back in his chair. This stops looking like a legal case and starts looking like a military operation. The timing is too precise. They took my car, I said. They have the tin. The police stop wasn't about the car, Elliot said. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with his tie. It is a pressure tactic. It is called a squeeze. They hit you hard, fast, and publicly. They create a record police reports, arrest logs, emails to your boss. They paint a picture of you as unstable and criminal. But I didn't do anything, I insisted. That doesn't matter, he said. The goal isn't to convict you of stealing a car. The goal is to make you so terrified, so exhausted, and so broke that when they offer you a settlement to walk away from the estate, you take it just to make the pain stop. He looked me in the eye. Your sister is playing for keeps. If you fight this, it is going to get worse before it gets better. They will weaponize your anxiety. They will drag up every mistake you have ever made. Do you have the stomach for that? I thought about the officer pointing the gun at me. I thought about the email from HR. I thought of Grandma Eleanor, who had squeezed my hand and told me I was stronger than I knew. I am not signing anything, I said. I want to go see her. I advise against that, Elliot said. I need to look her in the eye, I said. I need to know if she is really this gone. The house on Elm Street was exactly as I remembered it, and yet entirely different. The hydrangeas I had planted were overgrown. The shutters were drawn. I pulled Jenna's car into the driveway. My car was still in the impound lot, and walked up the path. My key still worked. I stepped into the foyer. Mallory, she was in the living room, sitting on the velvet sofa, flipping through a magazine. She looked up as I entered. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and jeans that cost more than my monthly rent. On the coffee table sat a new designer handbag, the leather stiff and pristine. Her nails were freshly manicured, a sharp, glossy red. "You're out," she said. It wasn't a question. "You called the police on me," I said. I stood in the archway, my hands balled into fists to keep them from shaking. "You told them I was armed. You told them I was unstable." Mallory sighed and closed the magazine. "Ariana, honestly, you disappeared after the meeting. I was worried. You know how you get when you're stressed. I thought you might hurt yourself." "You reported the car stolen," I said. "My car?" "The estate paid for the repairs last year," Mallory said smoothly. "Technically, that creates a lien interest. I was just protecting the assets. I had no choice." "You forged my signature on an inventory list." Mallory's eyes flickered. Just for a second. "I don't know what you're talking about. You signed that list. Maybe you forgot. You do have a terrible memory." The gaslighting was so casual, so practiced. She was rewriting reality in real time. "Why?" I asked. "Grandma hasn't even been gone a month. Why are you doing this?" Mallory stood up. She smoothed her sweater. "Because you are not capable of handling this. Ari, you are fragile. Look at you. You are shaking right now. I am doing the heavy lifting. I am the executor. I am taking care of things." "Grandma named me executor in the will 3 years ago," I said. "And she changed it 6 months ago," Mallory said, her voice dropping to a cool, hard tone. "Because she knew you couldn't handle the pressure, just like you couldn't handle the car on the highway. Is that what this is?" I gestured to the room, to her bag. "You are looting the place." "Mallory." The voice came from the kitchen. My mother, Linda James, walked in. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked at me, then at Mallory. "Mom," I said, stepping forward. Did you know she had me arrested?" Linda frowned. She didn't look at me with sympathy. She looked at me with annoyance. "Ariana, please," Linda said. "Don't make a scene. Mallory was just trying to make sure the car was safe. You know you aren't the best driver." The betrayal hit me harder than the police confrontation. My mother wasn't protecting me. She was managing me. "She told them I had a gun, Mom," I said. "I could have been shot." "Oh, stop being dramatic," Linda snapped. "Nobody was going to shoot you. Mallory is just handling the estate business. She is the responsible one. You need to let her do her job and stop causing problems. We have enough to deal with." I looked between them. Mallory, smug and polished. Linda, anxious and compliant. The narrative was set in stone. I was the problem. I was the crazy one. Mallory was the savior. And Linda would side with whoever made her life easier, right now. That was the daughter with the checkbook. "I am not the problem," I said quietly. And I am not going to let you steal what Grandma wanted me to have. There is nothing for you to have, Mallory said. Just sign the settlement. Ari, go back to your little speech clinic. Before you lose that, too. She knew about the email. Of course she did. She probably wrote it. I turned and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it very gently. It felt like closing the lid on a coffin. That night, back in my apartment, I sat on the floor of my bedroom. The city lights filtered through the blinds, casting stripes of shadow across the rug. I had failed to get the tin back from the police, but Mallory had made a mistake. She thought the tin was the treasure. She didn't know about the second tin. Grandma Eleanor had been a woman of redundancies. If you want to hide something, Ari, put it in a box, then put a decoy box in front of it. The tin the police took contained old recipes and a few silver dollars. It was bait. I reached under my bed and pulled out a shoebox. Inside, wrapped in a winter scarf, was the real tin. I had taken it from the house 3 days before Grandma died. When she squeezed my hand and pointed to the bottom drawer of her dresser, my hands were steady now. The anger had burned away the panic, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I took a hairpin and jimmied the simple lock. It popped open with a metallic snap. Inside, there was a single brass key, a handwritten note on Grandma's personalized stationery, and a thick envelope sealed with red wax. I unfolded the note first. My dearest Ariana, if you are reading this, then Mallory has shown her true face. I am sorry. I tried to fix it while I was alive, but your sister, she has an appetite that cannot be fed. Do not trust your mother. She loves peace more than she loves truth. The envelope contains an addendum to my will. I wrote it with a new lawyer. One Mallory does not know. It names you sole executor. But listen to me carefully. Do not file this immediately. If you file it, she will destroy it or destroy you. Wait. Let her play her hand. Let her think she has won. Use the key. Find where the money went. I love you. You are the strong one. You always were. Grandma. I picked up the envelope. The label was typed in stark black ink. Addendum, to be filed only if Mallory challenges. I held it to my chest. I felt a sob rise in my throat. But I swallowed it down. Grandma had known. She had sat in that house, watching Mallory circle like a shark, watching Linda look the other way. And she had planned this. She hadn't just left me an inheritance. She had left me a mission. Mallory thought she was fighting the sister who cried when people yelled. She thought she was fighting the sister who had panic attacks on the highway. She was wrong. She was fighting the sister who had the truth. I put the document back in the tin and locked it. I slid it back under the bed. Then I picked up my phone and texted Elliot Marsh. I have the ammunition. Tell me when to fire. I lay back on the floor and stared at the ceiling. The fear was still there, lurking at the edges of my mind. But beneath it, something new was taking root. Revenge. But not just revenge. Justice. I closed my eyes. The war had started, and I was going to finish it. The reception desk at Harrow and Lyle Fiduciary Services was a fortress of polished mahogany, designed to make anyone standing on the client side feel small, insignificant, and preferably silent. I stood there for 10 minutes, staring at the receptionist who was aggressively typing. Before I finally cleared my throat loud enough to break her trance, I was not leaving without the file. When Corinne Harrow finally appeared, she did not invite me back into her office. She met me in the lobby, clutching a tablet like a shield. Corinne was a woman who usually projected effortless competence, her hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection. But today she looked frayed. Her eyes darted toward the elevators, then back to me. Ariana, she said, her voice pitched low. I told you on the phone, the file is currently under review. It is my grandmother's estate, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the thumping of my heart. I am a beneficiary. I am the executor named in the will you have on file. You cannot block me from seeing the ledger. Corinne shifted her weight. There is a contest regarding the executorship. Ariana, your sister has raised concerns regarding your capacity to serve until the court clarifies the appointment. The family has requested limited disclosure. The family, I asked sharply. You mean Mallory? Since when does Mallory dictate firm policy? It is standard procedure to freeze access when there are allegations of misconduct, Corinne said, reciting the line like a rehearsed script. We have to be neutral. Neutral? I stepped closer. My sister had me arrested based on information she could only have gotten if someone here told her I was leaving the building. Was that neutral? Corinne? Her face went pale. For a split second, the professional mask slipped, and I saw genuine fear. She wasn't just being bureaucratic. She was being bullied. I can't help you today, Ariana, she whispered. Please, don't make this harder. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking a sharp, retreating rhythm on the marble floor. I watched her go, realizing that the rot went deeper than just a family squabble. Mallory had leverage here. I needed a soldier. Elliot Marsh had been great for keeping me out of a jail cell, but for the war over the estate, I needed someone who understood the blood sport of probate court. Jenna had asked around and came back with one name, Nina Calder. Nina's office was the polar opposite of Harrow and Lyle. It was located above a Thai restaurant in a strip mall, and the air in the waiting room smelled faintly of lemongrass and old paper. Nina herself was a whirlwind of energy. A woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on a mess of curly gray hair and a desk buried under avalanches of case files. She didn't offer me tea. She offered me a hard truth. Here is the reality, Ariana, Nina said, tossing my copy of the will onto her desk. Probate is not about who is right. It is about who runs out of money first. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. Your sister is using a strategy we call starving the beast. She files a petition. You have to pay me to answer it. She files a motion for an emergency hearing. You have to pay me to show up. She requests a continuance. We wait. All the while, the estate assets are frozen, or worse, being drained by her temporary administration fees. She can't just drain the money, I said. That is illegal. She can if she claims it is for estate preservation, Nina corrected. She will hire appraisers, consultants, security. She will burn through the cash so that by the time you win, if you win, there is nothing left to inherit. And the kicker. She is betting you will break before that happens. She is betting you will sign whatever settlement she slides across the table just to stop the bleeding. She claims I am unstable, I said. She's going to tell the judge I can't be executor because I have anxiety, and that is her ace, Nina said grimly. In family court, an accusation is halfway to a conviction. If she paints you as volatile, the judge might appoint a third-party administrator just to be safe. That administrator will bill the estate $300 an hour until the accounts are dry. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. So what do? We stop playing defense, Nina said. We find out what she is so afraid of you finding. People don't go to these lengths for a standard inheritance. If she is scorching the earth, it is because she is trying to bury something. The memorial service for my grandmother was held at Westmere Chapel 2 days later. It was a beautiful, sunny day, the kind of day Grandma would have loved, which made the darkness of the occasion feel even heavier. I arrived early, hoping to find a quiet corner, but the room was already filling with the town's elite. Briar Glen was the kind of place where attendance at a funeral was less about grief and more about social standing. Mallory was already there, holding court near the altar. She was a vision of tragic elegance in a black silk dress that fit perfectly. She dabbed at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, accepting condolences with a trembling chin. I watched her from the back of the room. It was a performance worthy of an award. She leaned into the embrace of the church deacon, her shoulders shaking just enough to convey heartbreak without messing up her hair. When she saw me, her expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. She whispered something to our Aunt Sarah, who looked at me with a mixture of pity and alarm. I walked down the aisle to take my seat. The air felt thick, charged with unspoken whispers. As I passed the rows of pews, conversations stopped. I could feel the eyes on me. That's the one. They were thinking. The one who got arrested, the unstable one. I sat in the second row, leaving the front row for Mallory and our mother. Linda James sat next to Mallory, staring straight ahead, her face a mask of conflict avoidance. She didn't look at me. During the service, Mallory gave the eulogy. She spoke of Grandma's grace, her generosity, and her final difficult days. Toward the end, Mallory said, her voice catching theatrically, Grandma was so worried about the future. She wanted peace for this family. She wanted to know that we would take care of each other, especially those of us who struggle to find our way. She looked directly at me. The room followed her gaze. It was a public execution disguised as a tribute. She was telling the entire town that I was the burden Grandma had left behind. I sat stone still, digging my fingernails into my palms until I felt the sharp bite of pain. Do not cry, I told myself. Do not give her the satisfaction of a scene. After the service, as the crowd shuffled toward the reception hall, a hand touched my elbow. It was Mrs. Gable, Grandma's neighbor for 20 years. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a grip like iron. Ariana, she said quietly, I am sorry for your loss. Eleanor loved you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Gable, I said. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. Listen to me. I saw Mallory's car at the law offices in the city last week, not the local one. She was parked at the firm of Grant Sable. My blood ran cold. I knew that name. Everyone in the county knew that name. Grant Sable was not just a lawyer, he was a demolition expert. He was the man you hired when you wanted to destroy someone's life legally. He was expensive, ruthless, and known for dragging cases out for years. Are you sure? I asked. I know his car, she said. He drives that ridiculous yellow sports car. She was getting into it with him. Watch your back, honey. That man does not lose. She squeezed my arm and melted back into the crowd. I stood there, feeling the walls of the chapel closing in. Mallory wasn't just relying on family drama. She had brought in a heavy hitter. I was a pediatric speech therapist with a savings account that could barely cover 2 months of rent. I was bringing a knife to a nuclear war. The next morning, I sat in Nina's office with a copy of the police report I had finally obtained. Nina was going through it with a highlighter. Her brow furrowed. Look at the timestamp, she said, tapping the paper. I looked. The call to dispatch came in at 2:45 in the afternoon. I left Harrow and Lyle at 2:38, I said. I remember looking at the clock in the car. 7 minutes, Nina said. 7 minutes from you walking out the door to the call being placed, and look at the route description given by the caller. Heading south on a 71 passing the exit for Route 18. That is exactly where I was, I said. The caller knew your location in real time, Nina said. Mallory wasn't guessing. She was watching you, or she had someone watching you. Why, I asked. Why go to that trouble? To separate you from that car, Nina said. Think about it. The police impound the car. You are taken to the station. The car sits in the lot, unsupervised, for hours before they process it. If she has a key, or knows someone who can pop a lock. She wanted to search it, I realized. She thought I had the estate documents in the car. We need to see the car, Nina said. We drove to the impound lot in Nina's cluttered sedan. The lot was a desolate expanse of gravel and chain-link fences on the outskirts of town. It cost me $300 to get my car released. Another fee I could barely afford. When I walked up to my silver sedan, it looked sad and dusty. I unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat. It smelled of stale heat and someone else's cologne, the officer who drove it. Maybe. Check everything, Nina said from the passenger window. I opened the glove box. My registration was there. Messy, but intact. I checked the center console. My sunglasses were still there. Then I looked at the back seat. The fabric of the rear bench seat was slightly askew. I climbed into the back and ran my fingers along the seam where the seat met the plastic side panel. The plastic was loose. I pulled on it gently. It popped out with barely any resistance. One of the retention clips had been snapped off. There were faint, jagged scratches near the trunk latch release, as if someone had used a screwdriver to pry it open in a hurry. "They were here," I said, my voice trembling. "Someone pulled this panel off." "Looking for the tin," Nina said. "They knew you took it from the house." "They didn't find the real one," I said. "But they tried. God. Nina, they broke into my car while it was in police custody." "It means we are right," Nina said, her eyes gleaming with a fierce intelligence. "They are desperate, and desperate people make mistakes." I went straight to the bank. The Briar Glen Community Bank was a relic of a different era, with high marble ceilings and tellers who gave lollipops to children. It was where Grandma had banked for 40 years. I requested access to the safe deposit box. The clerk checked my ID, then checked the authorization card. "Ah, yes," she said. "You are a co-signer on the box. One moment." She led me into the vault. The air was cool and smelled of steel. She unlocked her side, and I slid the small brass key from the tin into the second lock. It turned smoothly. I pulled the long metal box out and carried it to a private viewing room. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. I opened the lid. There were no diamonds. There were no stacks of cash. There was a stack of bank statements, bound with a rubber band, and a single ledger book, the kind you buy at an office supply store for $5. I opened the ledger. It was written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. January 12th. Withdrawal $4,000. Purpose Care Assistance. Payee Northline. February 14th. Withdrawal $4,500. Purpose Medical Supplies. Payee Northline. March 20. Withdrawal $6,000. Purpose Emergency Consult. Payee Northline. I flipped through the pages. The entries went back 3 years. The amounts varied: $3,000 here, $7,000 there, but the payee was always the same Northline. I pulled the official bank statements from the stack. I compared the dates. The withdrawals matched. They were all checks, written to Northline Care Logistics. I did the math in my head. Over 3 years. The total was nearly $200,000. $200,000, I whispered. Grandma had good insurance. She had Medicare. She didn't have expensive private nurses. Family and neighbors helped her until the very end. So where was this money going? I took photos of every page with my phone. I shoved the documents back into the box, locked it, and practically ran out of the bank. I met Nina at her office an hour later. I showed her the photos. Northline Care Logistics, she read. She typed the name into her computer. Generic name? Could be anything. I never heard of them, I said. Grandma never mentioned them. And look at the amounts. They are just below the threshold that usually triggers automatic fraud alerts for seniors. Smart, Nina said. Structuring the withdrawals. Whoever did this knew how to fly under the radar. I think Mallory was draining the account, I said. She was helping Grandma with her finances for years. We need proof, Nina said. But this is enough to start a fire. I am filing a motion to compel full accounting immediately. We are going to ask the judge to force Mallory to explain every single one of these checks. Nina drafted the motion while I paced the office. She filed it electronically at 4 o'clock. By 6 o'clock, the counter-strike hit. My phone buzzed with an email notification from the court system. Emergency petition for temporary restraining order and suspension of executor powers. I opened the attachment. It was filed by Grant Sable. Petitioner, Mallory James. Requests the immediate suspension of Ariana James from any role in the estate administration. Petitioner cites an active criminal investigation case 24-909 involving the respondent for theft of estate assets. Furthermore, petitioner asserts respondent poses a significant risk to the integrity of the estate due to documented mental instability and financial distress. She is using the police report, I said, staring at the screen. The one she filed. She created the investigation so she could use it as a reason to fire me. It is a loop, Nina said, reading over my shoulder. She accuses you of theft. The police investigate. She uses the investigation to prove you are untrustworthy. It is circular, but it is effective. The judge will see criminal investigation and pause everything. So she wins. No, Nina said. She buys time, but now we know she is scared. You don't hire Grant Sable to file emergency petitions unless you are terrified of what is coming out. The next day was Wednesday. I went to work at the Crestline Pediatric Speech Center. Trying to pretend my life wasn't imploding, I had a session with a 5-year-old boy named Leo who was learning to articulate his R sounds. I was in the middle of showing him flashcards when the receptionist knocked on the door. "Ariana?" she said, looking uncomfortable. "The director wants to see you." I left Leo with Jenna and walked to the director's office. The walk felt like a march to the gallows. Mrs. Higgins was a kind woman, but she answered to a board of donors. She looked miserable. "Sit down, Ariana," she said. I sat. "We have had more calls," she said. "Parents, someone is circulating rumors that you are involved in financial crimes and that you were arrested for carrying a weapon." "That is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "I was pulled over. It was a misunderstanding. My sister reported my car stolen." "I believe you," Mrs. Higgins said, "but the parents are worried, and the board is risk-averse. We work with children. Ariana, trust is our currency." She slid a letter across the desk. Administrative leave. "It is paid for now," she said. "But you can't be here, not until this police matter is officially closed and you are cleared." "This is exactly what she wants," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "She is trying to ruin me so I can't fight her." "I am sorry," Mrs. Higgins said. "Please take your personal items." I packed a small box, a framed photo of my dog, my favorite mug. Jenna stood by the door, watching me, her face pale with rage. "I will kill her," Jenna whispered. "I will actually kill her." "Don't," I said. "She would just sue you." I walked out of the building into the bright, blinding sunlight. I had lost my car for a day. Now I had lost my job. My identity as a therapist, the one thing that was purely mine, had been stripped away. I spent the rest of the day in bed, staring at the wall. I didn't eat. I didn't turn on the TV. I felt hollowed out. Around 8 o'clock, my phone pinged, a voicemail. I knew who it was before I looked. I pressed play. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the nightstand. "Hi, Ari," Mallory's voice filled the room. She sounded sweet, reasonable, the voice of a concerned big sister. "I heard about work. I am so sorry. That must be devastating. Look, I don't want to fight you. This is all getting out of hand, isn't it? Mom is a wreck. I am stressed. You are clearly struggling." There was a pause. I could hear her take a sip of something. "Grant drew up a new distribution agreement. It is generous. Ari, really generous. If you sign it, I can drop the estate claim. I can call the police and tell them the car thing was just a misunderstanding. The investigation goes away. You can get your job back. We can be a family again." Her voice dropped, becoming intimate. "Just sign the papers. Let me handle the money. It is too much for you. You know it is. Let's just end this. Call me." The message ended. I lay there in the dark, listening to the silence. It was a ransom demand. She was holding my life hostage, my career, my reputation, my peace of mind. She had taken them all, and she was offering to sell them back to me in exchange for Grandma's legacy. She thought she had broken me. She thought that by taking my job, she had taken my fight. I sat up. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. She was right about one thing. It was about control. But she didn't understand. I didn't want the money. I didn't care about the coins or the house. I wanted the truth. And I wanted her to answer for every single time she had made me feel small. I wasn't going to sign. I was going to find out who Northline was. And I was going to burn her kingdom down, even if I had to use the sparks from my own life to do it. I picked up the phone and texted Nina. She offered a settlement. I am declining. Then I texted Jenna. "Get the wine. We have work to do." My dining room table had ceased to be a place for eating. It was now a command center, a chaotic landscape of legal pads, printed bank statements, and sticky notes color-coded by levels of betrayal. Jenna sat across from me, nursing a glass of red wine, while I pinned another index card to the corkboard we had propped up against the wall. "Look at the minutes," I said, tapping the board. "Just look at them." I had constructed a timeline. It was the only way to make sense of the whirlwind that had destroyed my life in 72 hours. 2:38 in the afternoon, I leave the offices of Harrow and Lyle Fiduciary Services. 2:45 in the afternoon, a call is placed to the Highway Patrol dispatch line reporting a stolen vehicle. 2:52 in the afternoon, I am boxed in by squad cars. 7 minutes, I said. 7 minutes between me walking out that door and the police getting the call. And the caller gave them my exact location and heading. Nina Calder, who was on speakerphone from her office, chimed in. Her voice was tinny but sharp. "It is not just the timing, Ariana. It is the specificity. The caller knew you were on Interstate 71. They knew you were heading south. If you had just stolen the car from a driveway, the owner would not know your exact highway mile marker unless they were tracking you." "Mallory has the Find My Friends app on her phone," I said, feeling a cold realization wash over me. "We shared our locations years ago, for safety." "She tracked you," Nina said. "She waited until you left the meeting until you were vulnerable and in public, and then she triggered the stop. This was not an emotional reaction to a missing car. This was a tactical strike." "It reads like a military operation," Jenna muttered, swirling her wine. "Coordinate the target, call in the airstrike, survey the damage." "And look at the petition," Nina continued. She filed for temporary control of the estate exactly 3 hours after the arrest. She had that petition drafted and ready to go. You cannot write a 20-page legal motion in 3 hours. Grant Sable had that document sitting on his hard drive, waiting for the arrest number to be filled in. I looked at the timeline. It was a perfect, jagged line of destruction. Harrow and Lyle, the police, the impound lot, the court filing. "It is a setup," I said softly. "The whole thing. She didn't just want me arrested. She needed a disqualifying event. She needed me to look criminal so she could take the reins before I figured out what she was doing with the money." "We need to know who helped her," Nina said. "Mallory is mean, but she is not sophisticated enough to pull off the fiduciary pressure by herself. Someone at Harrow and Lyle tipped her off that you were asking questions." The lobby of Harrow and Lyle was quiet the next morning. I didn't make an appointment. I just walked in, wearing my most professional blazer and carrying a briefcase that contained nothing but a sandwich and a bluff. I asked for Corinne Harrow. The receptionist hesitated, then made a call. 5 minutes later, Corinne appeared. She didn't look like the polished executive she had been a week ago. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she was twisting a diamond ring on her finger. "Ariana," she said, her voice tight. "I cannot discuss the file. I told you." "I am not here for the file," I said. I kept my voice low, pleasant. "I am here to give you a courtesy heads up." I tapped the briefcase. "I found the addendum. Corinne, it was a gamble. I had the tin, and I had the sealed envelope, but I hadn't filed it yet. I needed to see if the mere mention of it drew blood." Corinne's face did something complicated. Her jaw unclenched, then tightened again. Her eyes widened, focusing on the briefcase with a look of pure dread. It wasn't confusion, it was recognition. "The addendum," she whispered. "The one Grandma wrote when she realized money was leaking," I said. "The one that names me sole executor and explicitly removes Mallory for cause." Corinne looked around the lobby. We were alone, but she acted as if the walls had ears. "You need to file that," she hissed, leaning in. "If you have it, file it. Today." "Why?" I asked. "Why the urgency?" "Corinne, unless you already knew it existed." She stepped back, her face shutting down. The fear was replaced by a rigid, terrified professional courtesy. "I cannot discuss this without a court order. Please leave, Ariana." before it gets complicated. Who is pressuring you? I asked. Is it Grant Sable? Is it someone inside the firm? Please leave, she repeated. She turned and walked rapidly toward the elevators. Almost running, I stood there, watching the brass doors close. She knew about the addendum, and she was terrified of what would happen when it came to light. Which meant Mallory wasn't just working with Grant Sable. She had hooks inside the very firm that was supposed to be protecting Grandma's legacy. Northline Care Logistics, Nina said later that afternoon. We were in her car, driving out to the edge of town where the zoning shifted from residential to light industrial. I ran a corporate search, Nina said, keeping her eyes on the road. Incorporated 3 years ago, registered agent is a generic service in Delaware. No website other than a landing page with a stock photo of a nurse holding a stethoscope. No LinkedIn employees, no reviews. But they cash checks for $200,000, I said. Shell company, Nina said. Textbook. You set up a fake entity. You bill the estate for consulting or care management, and you cash the checks. It is the easiest way to steal money if you have power of attorney. We pulled into a dreary office park. It was a row of beige stucco buildings with faded awnings. We found the address listed on the bank statement Suite 404. It was next to a dry cleaner and a vape shop. I got out of the car. The windows of Suite 404 were dark. There was no sign on the door, just a piece of paper taped to the inside of the glass. For lease. Commercial space available immediately. I cupped my hands against the glass and peered inside. It was empty. No desks, no medical equipment, just gray carpet and a few dead flies on the windowsill. Nobody's been caring for patients in there, I said. Nina took a picture of the empty storefront with her phone. Evidence, she said. This is where the money went, into thin air. A bell jingled behind us. A man walked out of the vape shop, exhaling a cloud of strawberry-scented smoke. He looked at us, then at the empty suite. Looking to rent, he asked. Don't bother. The landlord is a nightmare. Actually, I said, turning on my best therapist voice, warm, non-threatening. We are looking for the previous tenant, a care logistics company. We have an invoice from them. The man laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. Care company, lady. That place has been empty for 2 years. The only thing in there was a table and a chair. Did you ever see anyone? Nina asked. Just the mail lady, the man said. Came by once a month, in a hurry. Nice car, big sunglasses. I felt a pulse in my neck. What did she look like? Tall, he said. Blonde. Always wore those heels that click really loud on the pavement. She would unlock the door, grab the mail off the floor, and leave. 5 minutes, tops. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled to a picture of Mallory and me at Christmas 2 years ago. Is this her? I asked, zooming in on Mallory's face. The man squinted. Yeah, that is her. Looks richer in the picture, though she always looks stressed when she came here. Thank you, I said. You have been very helpful. We walked back to the car. Nina slammed her door shut. We have her, Nina said. She was running a fake vendor. That is fraud. That is embezzlement. That is prison time. She needed the money, I said, staring at the for lease sign. Grandma said she had an appetite that couldn't be fed. Where did $200,000 go? Nina. Gambling debt, blackmail. Nina shrugged. It doesn't matter. What matters is we can prove she stole it. The victory felt short-lived. When I got back to my apartment, there was a notice in my mailbox. A slip telling me I had a certified letter waiting at the post office. I drove there immediately. The envelope was thick and heavy. The return address was the law office of Grant Sable. I sat in my car and tore it open. Demand for return of estate property. Dear Ms. James, as acting administrator of the estate of Eleanor Vance, our client, Mallory James, has conducted a preliminary inventory of the decedent's assets. It has come to our attention that a collection of antique gold coins, valued at approximately $50,000, is missing from the residence. Witness testimony suggests you were the last person to have unsupervised access to the safe in the master bedroom. Furthermore, the estate believes these items were removed from the premises in the vehicle you recently claimed ownership of. Unless these items are returned within 48 hours, we will be forced to file a civil claim for conversion and refer the matter to the district attorney. I lowered the letter. The coins. Grandma had a set of Liberty Head gold coins. She kept them in a velvet pouch. For emergencies, Ari, she used to say, if the world ends, gold is better than paper. They searched the car for the coins, I said aloud to the empty parking lot. The loose panel, the scratches near the trunk. Mallory didn't care about the biscuit tin. She thought I had grabbed the gold. She knew I was broke. She projected her own greed onto me. She assumed that if I took anything, it would be the thing with the highest pawn value. But I didn't have the coins. I hadn't seen them in years, which meant Mallory had probably taken them herself, and now she was pinning the theft on me to explain why they were missing from the inventory. It was the perfect crime. Steal the gold, then accuse the sister you have already painted as a criminal of taking it. I called Jenna. I need your brain, I said. Grandma hid things. We know about the biscuit tin. We know about the fake bank account, but she knew Mallory was looting the house. If she wanted to leave me something really important evidence, or the truth, where would she put it? She liked boring things, Jenna said immediately. Remember when we were kids? She hid her emergency cash in that box of tampon applicators in the bathroom because she said no burglar would ever look there. I can't go to the house, I said. Mallory changed the locks, and there is a restraining order pending. Get a court order, Jenna said. Nina can get you a retrieval of personal effects visit. Tell the judge you left your winter coat or your birth certificate. They have to let you in with a supervisor. Nina worked her magic. 2 days later, I was standing on the porch of my childhood home, a junior associate from Grant Sable's office. A young man named Derek, who looked like he was 12 years old, was waiting for me with a clipboard. You have 30 minutes, Derek said, checking his watch. You are authorized to retrieve personal clothing and identification documents only. I have to accompany you to every room. Fine, I said. I walked into the house. It smelled of stale air and cleaning chemicals. Mallory had already begun sanitizing the place. The photos were gone from the mantel. The knickknacks were boxed up. I went to the kitchen. My birth certificate is in the pantry, I lied. In the recipe box, Derek followed me. I scanned the shelves. Grandma had hundreds of cookbooks, but there was one that she never used, a battered copy of The Art of French Cooking that she had bought at a thrift store because she liked the cover. She hated French food. She said it was too fussy. There it was, top shelf, sitting slightly crooked, just like always. I think it might be up here, I said, reaching up. Ms. James, please stick to the list, Derek said, bored. I hid my passport in here, I said. I was paranoid. I pulled the book down. It felt heavy. Not paper heavy, dense. I opened it. The pages had been hollowed out. A square block had been cut from the center of the text block. Inside the hollow was not a passport. It was a small plastic pouch taped to the back cover. Inside the pouch was a black USB drive and a slip of paper with a single word written on it in Grandma's script, hydrangea. My heart hammered against my ribs. Is that your passport? Derek asked, looking up from his phone. No, I said, shielding the book with my body. Just an old bookmark. I slid the flash drive out of the pouch and palmed it. I crumpled the note into my fist. I shoved the book back onto the shelf. Must be in the other room, I said. I managed to grab a random coat from the closet and leave. I could feel the plastic rectangle of the drive burning a hole in my pocket. Nina locked the door of her office. We sat at her computer. I plugged the drive in. A password prompt appeared. Hydrangea, I typed. The folder opened. It was a digital graveyard of secrets. There were scanned PDFs of letters, bank statements, and an audio file titled listen_to_me.mp3. Play it, Nina said softly. I clicked the file. Grandma's voice filled the room. It was raspy. She must have recorded it shortly before the stroke. but the steel was still there. Ariana, if you are listening to this, then I am gone. And if I am gone, Mallory has likely already started the war. I closed my eyes. It was like she was in the room. I need you to know the truth. Mallory has been taking money for 3 years. She calls them loans. She tells me she is in trouble. Gamblers. She says, investments gone wrong. I gave her what I could. But it was never enough. She set up a company called Northline. She made me sign checks. I did it because I was afraid she would go to jail if I didn't. There was a pause, the sound of her sipping water. Your mother knows. Linda knows everything. She begged me to keep paying. She said it would destroy the family name if Mallory was exposed. Linda cares more about the neighbor's opinion than right and wrong. My stomach turned. Mom knew. She wasn't just in denial. She was complicit. I am leaving you the house, Ari, and the remaining accounts, but I know they will try to take it. Mallory has been telling the doctors I am confused. She has been telling people you are unstable. Listen to me. If they say you are unstable, it is because they need you silent. They know you are the only one with the moral compass to stop them. Do not let them break you. You are the executor. You are the daughter I am proud of. Fight them. The recording ended. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face. It was vindication. Pure, absolute vindication. We have it, Nina whispered. This is the nuclear option. We have her confession on tape. We have her confirming the Northline fraud. And we have proof that Mom is part of the cover-up, I said, wiping my eyes. That is why she didn't defend me. She is protecting the secret. The high lasted exactly 4 hours. That evening, a process server knocked on my apartment door. He handed me a thick stack of papers. Temporary protection order. Petitioner Mallory James. Respondent Ariana James. Allegations on Monday. February 2nd. The respondent appeared at the petitioner's residence in a state of manic rage. Respondent screamed threats of violence, pounded on the door, and attempted to force entry. Petitioner fears for her safety and requests the respondent be barred from coming within 500 feet of the petitioner, her home, or the estate property. I wasn't even there, I shouted at the empty hallway. I was at work. I called Nina. I was hyperventilating. She is manufacturing incidents, Nina said, her voice grim. She knows we are getting close. She wants to make sure you can't come to the hearings. If you have a restraining order against you, it makes it incredibly difficult to depose her or attend probate proceedings. She is lying, I said. I have witnesses. I was at the speech center on Monday. It doesn't matter, Nina said. In the short term, the judge will grant it ex parte just to be safe. We have to fight it in court. But Ari, listen to me. She is trying to bait you. She wants you to violate this order. She wants you to call her, or drive by or text her screaming. If you do that, you go to jail, real jail. I won't, I said. I won't give her the satisfaction. From now on, Nina said, you do not speak to her. You do not speak to your mother. You speak only through me. We are going dark. We build the case, and we drop the hammer at the evidentiary hearing. Okay, I said. Okay. I hung up. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I had the evidence. I had the truth. But I had lost everything else. My sister was a criminal. My mother was a coward. My grandmother was dead. I realized then that I wasn't fighting to save my family. The family I thought I had, the one with Sunday dinners and shared holidays, was a fiction. It had been wrought in performance for years. I was grieving a ghost. I went to the kitchen and poured the rest of the wine down the sink. I needed to be clear-headed. I sat back down at the table. I took the index card that said Mallory and moved it to the center of the board. Then I took a red marker and wrote one word across it. Target. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the prosecutor. And court was about to be in session. The Ashford County Probate Court smelled of floor wax and old grievances. It was a smell I associated with stale coffee and the damp wool of cheap suits. But today it smelled like fear. My fear. I sat at the mahogany table next to Nina Calder. My hands were folded in my lap. gripping my knuckles so tight the skin had turned white. Across the aisle, separated by 3 feet of carpet and a lifetime of betrayal, sat my sister. Mallory looked impeccable. She was wearing a navy blue sheath dress that screamed responsible conservator. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. Next to her, Grant Sable leaned back in his chair, checking his watch with the air of a man who billed $1,200 an hour and found the court's schedule personally insulting. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. The Honorable Teresa Weller swept into the room. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp glasses and an expression that suggested she had heard every lie a family could tell and was impressed by none of them. "Estate of Eleanor Vance," Judge Weller read from the docket. "We are here on the petition for temporary orders and the counter-motion for full accounting. Mr. Sable, you may begin." Grant Sable stood up. He didn't look at me. He looked at the judge, his voice a smooth, rich baritone that filled the room. "Your Honor, this is a tragic case. My client, Mallory James, has been forced to step in to protect her grandmother's legacy from, unfortunately, from her own sister." He picked up a stack of documents bound with a heavy clip. "We have submitted Exhibit A, the police report from last week. As you can see, the respondent, Ariana James, was detained by the Highway Patrol for driving a vehicle reported as misappropriated. The report notes she was considered armed and unstable by the reporting party based on recent erratic behavior." "Objection," Nina said, half rising. "The reporting party was the petitioner herself. She is citing her own false report as evidence of my client's instability." "Sustained on the characterization," Judge Weller said, peering over her glasses. "Stick to the facts. Mr. Sable." "The facts, Your Honor," Sable continued seamlessly, "are that Miss James is currently on administrative leave from her employer due to these criminal allegations. We have an affidavit here from a neighbor stating Ms. James was seen screaming at the petitioner's front door just days ago. We have text messages from the decedent's daughter, Linda James, expressing deep concern for Ariana's mental health." He laid the papers down like winning playing cards. "We are not asking to disinherit anyone. We are simply asking that Mallory James be confirmed as temporary administrator to secure the assets, specifically the real estate and the accounts, until Miss James can seek the help she clearly needs." It was a masterpiece of fiction. He had taken the trauma they inflicted on me, the arrest, the job loss, the panic, and woven it into a narrative where I was the villain and Mallory was the reluctant hero. Nina stood up. She didn't have Sable's polish. She had a messy stack of files and a voice that scraped like sandpaper. "Your Honor, this is not a rescue mission. It is a hostile takeover." Nina walked to the podium. The police stop was orchestrated. The screaming incident was a fabrication to secure a protective order. And while Mr. Sable wants to talk about my client's mental health, we would like to talk about math. Nina held up the bank statements. "We have identified $200,000 in withdrawals from the decedent's accounts over the last 3 years, paid to a company called Northline Care Logistics. We have evidence suggesting this company is a shell entity with no employees and no operations. Linked to the petitioner." Mallory stiffened. I saw her hand twitch toward her water glass. "Furthermore," Nina said, her voice rising, "we are submitting into evidence a sealed addendum to the will of Eleanor Vance, dated 6 months ago. This document, which we will authenticate, explicitly names Ariana James as sole executor and cites financial irregularities involving Mallory James as the reason for the change." Grant Sable was on his feet instantly. "Objection. We have not seen this document. It hasn't been filed." "It is being filed now," Nina said, slamming the folder onto the evidence table. Judge Weller looked from Sable to Nina. She picked up the folder containing the addendum. She opened the seal. The room was silent for a long minute while she read. Finally, she looked up. "I am ordering limited discovery," Judge Weller said. "Mr. Sable, your client will provide a full accounting of the Northline transactions within 14 days. Ms. Calder, You will submit the addendum for forensic authentication. Until then, the estate assets are frozen. No one sells anything. No one spends a dime. We will reconvene in 3 weeks. Your Honor, Sable started. 3 weeks, Judge Weller snapped. And I want to be very clear. If I find that estate funds have been used to pay for personal legal fees, I will hold someone in contempt. Adjourned. The gavel banged. I let out a breath. We hadn't won. But we hadn't lost. We had stopped the bleeding. As we packed up, Mallory walked past me. She didn't look at me. She looked straight ahead, her face a mask of cold fury. But as she passed, I heard her whisper to Sable, "Fix this, Grant. Just fix it." I walked out of the courthouse feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline. The sunlight was blinding after the dim courtroom. "Ms. James Ariana James." I turned. A young man with a scruffy beard and a phone mounted on a stabilizer gimbal was jogging toward me. "Seth Miller, the Briar Glen Buzz," he said, shoving the phone in my face. "Do you have a comment on the allegations that you threatened your sister with a gun?" I recoiled. "What? No, I never had a gun. The police report says armed and unstable," Seth pressed, walking backward to keep me in frame. "And we have sources saying you were fired from the pediatric center for theft. Is it true you were stealing from the estate to pay for a gambling debt?" "That is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "Who told you that?" "Sources close to the family," he said. "Are you denying that your mother has called the police on you before?" "My mother never—" I stopped. I realized what was happening. This wasn't a journalist doing an investigation. This was a leak. Someone had fed him specific, twisted details, the police report language. The job lost to create a public record of my guilt. "No comment," Nina barked. Stepping between me and the camera, she grabbed my arm and steered me toward the parking lot. "Don't talk to him. Ari, walk." We reached Nina's car. I slammed the door and locked it, my chest heaving. "They are trying to try this in the court of public opinion," Nina said, starting the engine. "Sable knows the judge is skeptical, so they are going to make you toxic. If everyone in town thinks you are a thief, it puts pressure on the court." I looked out the window. Seth Miller was still filming, narrating to his livestream audience. "My own sister," I whispered. "She is destroying my name to cover a paper trail." The hits kept coming. 2 hours later, I was sitting at Nina's conference table, trying to organize the Northline documents. When my phone rang, it was an unknown number. "Hello? Ms. James, this is David from State Farm Claims Department." "Yes. I am calling regarding the claim filed yesterday on your silver sedan. Claim number 4992 regarding theft-related interior damage." I frowned. "I didn't file a claim." There was a pause, the sound of typing. "We received a digital claim submission yesterday at 4 o'clock. It lists the damage to the rear interior panel and the trunk latch. The claimant statement admits that the damage occurred during, and I quote, an unauthorized attempt to retrieve items from the vehicle by the policyholder while under duress. The room spun. "I did not write that," I said, gripping the phone. "I did not file a claim. Someone is impersonating me. It was filed through the app, Ms. James, using your login." Mallory. She knew my passwords. She had guessed them, or she had never forgotten them from when we shared accounts years ago. "Cancel it," I said. "Cancel the claim. It is fraud. I am telling you right now, it is fraud." "I will flag it for the Special Investigations Unit," David said, his voice cooling. "But Ms. James, filing a false claim is a felony if you are trying to retract a statement you made." "I didn't make it," I shouted. I hung up, my hands trembling uncontrollably. "What is it?" Nina asked. "She filed an insurance claim in my name," I said, feeling bile rise in my throat. "She admitted to the damage. She wrote a statement saying I damaged the car while I was under duress. She is creating a paper trail to explain the scratches so she can't be accused of searching it." "She is rewriting reality," Nina said, her face grim. "She is planting evidence in the insurance database because she knows we will subpoena those records. God, she is relentless." I put my head in my hands. I felt dizzy, like the floor was tilting. Every time I stood up, she knocked me down from a direction I didn't see coming. That night, at 11:30, my phone buzzed again. Blocked ID. I almost didn't answer. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, too wired to sleep, but something made me pick up. Hello? Meet me at the Galaxy Diner, off exit 90, 20 minutes. It was a woman's voice, breathless, terrified. Corinne, I asked. The line went dead. I didn't call Nina. There wasn't time. I threw on a hoodie and jeans, grabbed my keys, and drove. The Galaxy Diner was a neon-lit beacon in the darkness of the interstate. Inside, it smelled of bacon grease and sanitizer. There were only 2 other customers' truckers hunched over coffee. I found Corinne Harrow in the back booth. She was wearing a trench coat over pajamas. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. I slid into the booth opposite her. "Thank you for coming," I said quietly. Corinne didn't look at me. She stared at her hands, which were wrapped around a mug of water. "I can't testify," she said. "I won't do it. Ariana, I have 2 kids in college. I can't lose my license." "You are going to lose it anyway if this comes out and you did nothing," I said. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It is not just Mallory. It is Grant Sable. He has a relationship with one of the senior partners at our firm. They go back 20 years. She reached into her coat pocket and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "I found this in the archived server logs. I shouldn't have looked, but after you came in with the addendum, I had to know." I unfolded the paper. It was an email chain. The subject line was Vance Estate /urgent handling. From Grant Sable to Robert Lyle. Date January 15th, Fob. "Regarding the Vance matter, the younger sister is going to be a problem. We need to slow walk the disclosure. If she asks for the financials, stall. Cite, administrative review. I'm working on a disqualification strategy involving a police matter. I need you to hold the line until I get the temporary orders. Mallory will make it worth your while on the back-end fees." I read it twice. My blood boiled. "Collusion," I said. "They are working together to block me." "Grant Sable practically runs the legal community in this county," Corinne said. "If he finds out I gave you this, he will destroy me. He will sue me for breach of privilege. He will make sure I never work again." "Corinne," I said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. She flinched. "If you don't help me, they are going to win, and they are going to steal everything my grandmother worked for." "I can't testify," she repeated, tears leaking from her eyes. "But if you subpoena the specific server log listed at the bottom of that email, the IT department has to produce it. They can't delete it once a subpoena is served. It is a felony to destroy evidence under subpoena." She stood up abruptly. "Don't call me again, please." She rushed out of the diner, the bell above the door jingling cheerfully behind her. I looked down at the email. "Mallory will make it worth your while." It was the smoking gun. It proved that the delays, the limited disclosure, the stonewalling, it wasn't incompetence, it was a conspiracy. I drove home with the email tucked inside my shirt, against my skin. When I pulled into my apartment complex, my phone lit up with a text message. "Mom." I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to her since the confrontation at the house. I opened the message. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you, dragging your sister into court, making a public spectacle. You are tearing this family apart for money. Just stop. Ariana, please, before you ruin us all." I sat in the dark car, the engine ticking as it cooled. The words should have cut me open. A month ago, I would have called her, crying, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. I would have done anything to fix the rift. But tonight, I just felt a cold, dull ache. I thought about the audio recording on the flash drive. Grandma's voice. "Linda cares more about the neighbor's opinion than right and wrong." Mom wasn't texting me because she was morally outraged. She was texting me because she was scared. She knew that if I kept pulling the thread, the whole tapestry of lies was going to unravel, and her comfortable life of denial would go with it. She was choosing her comfort over my survival. I typed a reply. The only thing ruining this family is the truth you are trying to hide. I hovered my thumb over the send button, then I deleted it. She didn't deserve a response. She was an enemy combatant now. The next morning, Nina was energized. The email from Corinne had given her a new target. I am drafting the subpoena for the server logs now, Nina said, typing furiously. But we need to nail down the Northline connection. We need to prove Mallory is the one behind the curtain. The mailbox place was a dead end, I said. Just a description of a blonde woman. Not a dead end, Nina said. I ran the contact number for Northline again, the one on the bank forms. It is a burner phone, like we thought. But I have a friend in the telecom provider's fraud department. He couldn't give me the call logs without a warrant, but he gave me the activation location. She spun her monitor around. A map of Briar Glen was on the screen. A red pin was dropped on a gas station on Route 18. Texaco, 4500 West Main Street. The phone was purchased and activated on January 12th, 3 years ago, Nina said, at 4:15 in the afternoon. I stared at the map. That is the gas station near the high school. Mallory picks up her stepdaughter from soccer practice at the high school on Tuesdays. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through my calendar. 3 years ago, January 12th was a Tuesday, I said. I remember because I was supposed to meet her for dinner, and she was late. She said she had to stop for gas. She bought the burner phone on her way to dinner with you. Nina said, she set up the shell company to steal from your grandmother, and then she sat across from you and ate pasta. The level of sociopathy was breathtaking. It wasn't just greed. It was a complete lack of conscience. She could look me in the eye, smile, and steal, all in the same hour. We have circumstantial evidence, Nina said, but we need to tie the phone to her. Did she ever call you from a number you didn't recognize or text you? I thought about it. No, she is too careful. Wait, I said. The insurance claim. What? The insurance claim she filed in my name yesterday. She used the app, but she had to verify the login. Two-factor authentication. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my email. I went to the trash folder. There it was. An email from State Farm. Your verification code is 8890. I didn't see this because I was in court, I said. But the code was sent to my email. How did she get it? She has your email password, Nina said. If she logged into my email to get the code, I said slowly, then her IP address is in my email login history. We looked at each other. I went to the account settings. Recent activity. There was a login yesterday at 3:55. Location Briar Glen. OH. Device iPhone 14 Pro. I have an Android, I said. Mallory has an iPhone 14 Pro. And look at the IP address, Nina said, pointing. We can trace that. If it matches the IP address she uses for her own social media or emails, we have her committing identity theft. It is not just a family misunderstanding anymore, I said, feeling a grim satisfaction. It is a felony. 3 days later, a courier arrived at Nina's office. He delivered a thick envelope. It was a formal settlement offer from Grant Sable. Nina opened it and read it in silence. Then she looked at me over her glasses. They are blinking, she said. What is the offer? They are offering you the house, Nina said. Full title to Grandma's house. In exchange, you sign a waiver releasing all claims against the estate, the cash accounts, and Mallory personally. You also agreed to a non-disclosure agreement regarding the Northline matter. The house is worth $400,000, I said. The stolen cash is only $200,000. Why would she offer me more than she stole? Because the house is a trap, Nina said. I pulled the tax records this morning. There are 3 years of unpaid property taxes, and I suspect there might be a lien we don't know about yet. Plus, the house needs a new roof and the foundation is cracking. It is an asset on paper, but a liability in reality. She wants to dump the house on me, I realized. She keeps the liquid cash, the money she already stole, and the investments, and sticks me with a property I can't afford to maintain or sell. And the waiver, Nina added. That is the real prize. If you sign this, you can never sue her for the fraud. You can never go to the police. She walks away clean with the cash, and you get a house that will bankrupt you. It was tempting. For a split second, I thought about it. I could have the house. I could live there. I could stop fighting. I could make the fear go away. But then I thought about the for lease sign on the empty office. I thought about the fake insurance claim. I thought about the gun pointed at me on the highway. No, I said. Good, Nina said. Because if you take this, she wins. She gets to keep being the person who does this to people. Reject it, I said. Tell them we are going to trial. Tell them I don't want the house. I want the accounting. Nina smiled a sharp, predatory smile. I will draft the rejection letter, and I will attach the IP address log just to let them know we are watching. That evening, I sat on the floor of my apartment. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. I was broke. My savings were down to $300. I had no job. My mother hated me. My sister was trying to frame me. I felt a wave of despair crash over me. Was it worth it? Was justice worth this isolation? I pulled the flash drive out of my pocket. I plugged it into my laptop and put on my headphones. I clicked on the audio file. Ariana, if you are listening to this, I skipped forward to the end. I needed the end. If they say you are unstable, it is because they need you silent. They know you are the only one with the moral compass to stop them. I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me. Moral compass. For years, I had thought my sensitivity was a weakness. I thought my anxiety made me broken. Mallory was the strong one, the capable one. I was the one who felt too much. But Grandma saw it differently. She saw that my ability to feel pain was also my ability to detect rot. I wasn't unstable. I was responsive. I was reacting to a toxic environment in the only sane way possible. Mallory's strength was an illusion. It was built on lies, burner phones, and bullying. My strength was real. It was sitting here, in the dark, with $300 to my name, refusing to be bought. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. Grandma's voice whispered. I opened my eyes. I wasn't doubting myself anymore. I stood up. I walked to the corkboard on the wall. I looked at the timeline, the photos of the empty office, the email chain, the IP logs. It wasn't a mess. It was a map, and every road led to Mallory. I took a deep breath. The despair was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I was going to win, not because I was smarter, or richer, or meaner, but because I was the only one in the family who was willing to tell the truth. I turned off the light. Tomorrow, we would file the motion for the evidentiary hearing. Tomorrow, the end game began. The fluorescent lights of Nina Calder's office hummed with a sound that I had come to associate with bad news. But today, the hum felt different. It felt like the prelude to a thunderstorm. Nina was holding a piece of paper that had come in the latest document dump from Grant Sable's office. It was buried in a stack of meaningless bank flyers and privacy notices, a tactic lawyers call a document dump, designed to hide the needle in the haystack. But Nina had found the needle. Look at this, she said, sliding the paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of a receipt, a generic invoice from a shop called Goldman's Rarities in Columbus, Ohio. Item U.S. Liberty Head. Gold coin. Set. 1890 to 1907. Service professional appraisal for insurance purposes. Customer Mallory James. Date January 14th. I stared at the date. January 14th, I said, my voice flat. That was 2 weeks before Grandma died. Exactly, Nina said. Mallory took the coins while Grandma was still alive. She drove them 2 hours to Columbus to get them appraised under her own name. She told the appraiser she was the owner. She claimed she inherited them, I said, the pieces clicking together in my mind with a sickening snap. But she couldn't have inherited them on January 14th. Grandma was alive. She was sitting in her kitchen drinking tea. It is theft, Nina said. Pure and simple. And here's the kicker. The appraisal value, $62,000. I leaned back in the chair. Mallory had accused me of stealing these coins. She had sent a demand letter. She had threatened to call the district attorney, all while knowing exactly where they were because she had taken them herself before the body was even cold. She moved the assets ahead of the court battle, I said. She knew Grandma was fading, and she started looting the house early. This changes the spoliation argument, Nina said, her eyes sharp. Spoliation is when you destroy or hide evidence. This proves she was treating estate property as her personal piggy bank before she even had legal authority. I am filing an emergency motion. Tonight. Judge Weller did not look amused. We were back in courtroom 4B 3 days later. The air conditioner was broken, and the room was stiflingly hot. Mallory sat at the respondent's table, looking cool and detached, fanning herself with a manila folder. Mr. Sable, Judge Weller said, holding the appraisal receipt in her hand. Explain to me why your client was appraising estate assets in her own name 2 weeks prior to the decedent's passing. Grant Sable stood up. He adjusted his tie. He looked uncharacteristically flushed. Your Honor, my client was acting as a concerned family member. She wanted to ensure the valuables were properly insured given the chaotic environment in the home. The receipt lists her as the owner, Judge Weller noted. Not the agent, the owner. And where are these coins now? Mr. Sable. The court ordered a full inventory. Sable cleared his throat. That is the unfortunate part, Your Honor. When my client returned the coins to the home for safekeeping, they subsequently went missing. We believe they were removed during the period when the respondent, he gestured at me, had access to the property. I gasped. I couldn't help it. The audacity was physical. It felt like a slap. She is lying, I said. Ms. James, Judge Weller warned. Your Honor, Nina said, her voice shaking with controlled rage. This is absurd. The petitioner removes the coins, appraises them in secret, and now claims they were stolen the moment the court asks for them. This is classic spoliation. She has either sold them or hidden them. Judge Weller looked at Mallory. For a long, uncomfortable moment, the judge just stared. Ms. James, the judge said to Mallory, do you have a police report for this alleged theft of the coins from the home? Mallory stood up. She looked small, fragile. I didn't file one, Your Honor. I didn't want to get the police involved again. I was trying to protect my sister. Protect your sister, the judge repeated. Her tone was dry as dust. The same sister you reported for grand theft auto last week. Mallory didn't flinch. I was hoping we could settle this privately. You are ordered to produce the coins or the proceeds from their sale within 48 hours, Judge Weller said. If you do not, I will consider sanctions. And Mr. Sable, if I find out your client is playing shell games with $50,000 in gold, I will report it to the bar. Is that clear? Crystal, Your Honor, Sable said. As we walked out, Mallory stopped near the water fountain. She leaned in close to me. You think you are winning, she whispered. But you can't find what doesn't exist anymore, she smiled. And for a second, I saw the shark beneath the skin. She had sold them. I knew it. She had turned Grandma's emergency fund into cash to pay Sable's retainer. I went straight from probate court to Elliot Marsh's office. The criminal side of things was still hanging over my head like a guillotine. Elliot was sitting at his desk, headphones around his neck. He looked excited. We got the tape, he said. The 911 call, I asked. The dispatch recording, he corrected. Highway Patrol finally released it pursuant to discovery. You need to hear this. He plugged the speakers in. The audio was staticky. The dispatcher's voice was clear, but the caller's voice was muffled, as if they were holding the phone away from their mouth or talking through a piece of cloth. Dispatcher 911. What is your emergency? Caller, I need to report a stolen vehicle. Silver sedan, Honda, traveling south on I-71. Dispatcher, can you give me the license plate? Caller, yes. It is, hold on. There was a rustling sound. Caller, listen. You need to be careful. The driver. She is in a state. She is armed. She has a gun in the console. Dispatcher, you said the driver is armed. Caller, she is unstable. You know, she gets these ideas. She is in a state. I froze. Replay that, I said. The last part? Elliot clicked the mouse. She is in a state. That is it, I whispered. That is her tell. What? Elliot asked. Mallory, I said. She never says someone is upset. She never says someone is angry. She always says, she is in a state. It is a phrase our aunt used to use. Mallory picked it up when we were teenagers. She uses it whenever she is trying to sound superior and dismissive. It is distinctive, Elliot agreed. The cadence, the way she drops the pitch on the word state. It is her, I said. I would know that voice anywhere. Elliot pulled out a file. There is more. I deposed the records officer who took the initial notes. He remembers the call because he thought it was weird. Weird how? He said the caller was weirdly insistent on the armed part. Usually, people reporting a stolen car just want the car back. They don't offer up information about weapons unless asked. He said the caller kept circling back to it. Make sure they know she is dangerous. Make sure they have their guns out. She wanted me shot, I said. The realization was cold and heavy in my gut. She didn't just want me arrested. She wanted a tragedy. Or at least a scene big enough to ruin you, Elliot said. We are going to play this for Judge Weller. The armed and unstable narrative wasn't an observation. It was a script. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Higgins from the speech center. Ariana, can you come in? She asked. We need to talk. I knew what it was. I put on my best blazer, the one I wore to interviews, and drove to the office. The center was quiet. The kids were in sessions. I could hear the muffled sound of a toddler laughing through a closed door. It broke my heart. Mrs. Higgins met me in the conference room. The HR director was there, too. We have completed our internal review, Mrs. Higgins said. She looked pained. Ariana, we love you. You are one of the best therapists we have. But the board... She trailed off. The HR director slid a folder across the table. The police investigation is still open, the HR director said, her voice devoid of empathy. And now there are reports of a fraud inquiry in probate court. We have parents threatening to pull their children if you return. We simply cannot sustain the liability. I am innocent, I said. All of this, it is my sister. She is doing this to me. We understand that, Mrs. Higgins said softly. But perception is reality in our business. We can't have the distraction. She tapped the folder. We are offering you a resignation package, 2 months of severance, a neutral reference. We won't contest unemployment. And if I refuse, then we terminate for cause based on the violation of the moral turpitude clause in your contract, the HR director said. And you get nothing. I looked at the pen. I looked at the severance agreement. My career. 6 years of building trust, of helping kids find their voices. Gone because Mallory decided she needed a new kitchen or a vacation home. I picked up the pen. I will sign, I said. I signed my name. The ink looked dark and final. I am sorry. Ariana, Mrs. Higgins said. I stood up. I picked up the check. And then, something strange happened. I didn't feel like crying. I felt lighter. It is okay, I said. Really. I walked out to the parking lot. I sat in my car and looked at the building. For weeks, Mallory had been holding this over my head. Sign the settlement or lose your job. Do what I say, or I will ruin your career. Well, she had done it. She had fired the gun. The bullet had hit, and I was still standing. She had no leverage left. I had no job to protect. I had no reputation to save. I was just a woman with a severance check and a burning need for the truth. You can't threaten a woman who has nothing left to lose, I said to the rearview mirror. I started the car. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to Nina's office. When I arrived, Nina was on the phone, pacing back and forth. She waved me in, her eyes wide. Okay, she said into the phone. Okay, send it. Yes, I will protect the source. Thank you. Corinne. She hung up and looked at me. Corinne Harrow just flipped, she said. What happened? Grant Sable made a mistake, Nina said, grinning wolfishly. He filed a brief this morning blaming the clerical errors and the delay in producing documents on the administrative staff at Harrow and Lyle. He basically threw Corinne under the bus to save his own license. And she saw it. She saw it, and she decided she wasn't going to jail for him. Nina sat down at her computer. Check your email. She just sent the access logs. I opened my laptop. The file was a spreadsheet of login activity for the Harrow and Lyle secure portal. Look at the user column, Nina said. I scanned the list. User D_Pruitt. Access time February 12th, 11:42 p.m. Document Vance_estate_financials_confidential.pdf. User D_Pruitt. Access time February 14th, 2:15 a.m. Document Ariana_James_background_check.pdf. Derek Pruitt, I said. The kid, the one who supervised my visit to the house. He is a junior paralegal, Nina said. He has low-level clearance. But look at the IP addresses for those logins. I looked. IP 192.168. That is a residential IP, Nina said. And guess whose house it matches? Mallory's, I said. Mallory was logging into the law firm's database using Derek Pruitt's credentials, Nina said. From her own couch, in the middle of the night. How did she get his login? We are going to ask him, Nina said. I have already called him. I told him we have the logs, and we are referring it to the FBI as cybercrime unless he wants to talk. He is coming here. He is in the waiting room right now. Derek Pruitt looked like he was about to vomit. He was sitting on the edge of Nina's couch, twisting a baseball cap in his hands. He couldn't have been more than 24. I didn't know, he stammered. I swear. She just said she needed to check some dates. She said the firm was moving too slow and she wanted to help speed things up. She paid you, Nina said. It wasn't a question. Derek looked down at his shoes. I have student loans. Okay. And my car broke down. She offered me $5,000 cash just to give her my password for a week. She said it was harmless. Harmless? I said, my voice rising. She used that access to find out I was meeting with the administrator. She used it to track the estate values. She used it to find out about the addendum before I even filed it. She asked me to pull your background check, Derek whispered. She wanted to know if you had any prior arrests. When I told her you didn't, she got mad. She said, we will have to fix that. The room went silent. She said that, Nina asked. Quote, yeah, Derek said. She said, if she doesn't have a record, nobody will believe she is a criminal. We have to fix that. Will you testify to that? Nina asked. Derek looked terrified. If I do, I lose my job. I get disbarred before I even pass the bar. Derek, Nina said gently, if you don't testify, you are a co-conspirator in a felony fraud scheme. If you do testify, you are a witness who was manipulated. Which one do you want to be? He closed his eyes. I will testify. We had the gun. We had the bullets. We had the shooter. But there was one loose end. One person who had stood by and watched the execution. My mother. I drove to her house in the late afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn. Her car was in the driveway. I didn't knock. I used my key. I walked into the living room. Linda was watching the news. She jumped when she saw me. Ariana, she said, putting a hand to her chest. You scared me. You can't just barge in here. Mallory says... I don't care what Mallory says, I said. I walked over to the television and turned it off. The silence was sudden and heavy. I know, I said. Know what? Linda asked, her eyes darting to the door. I pulled the flash drive out of my pocket. I found the cookbook, I said. I found the recording. Linda's face went the color of old ash. She sank back into the sofa cushions. She told me, "Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Grandma told me everything on the tape. She told me about the loans. She told me about Northline, and she told me that you knew." Linda stammered. I didn't steal anything." "No," I said. "You didn't steal. You just held the flashlight while Mallory robbed the place." "Mallory was in trouble," Linda said, her voice rising to a whine. "She had debts. Ariana, terrible debts. Some people, scary people. She needed the money. If Grandma didn't help her, she was going to get hurt." "So you let her drain Grandma's accounts?" "It was family money," Linda cried. "It stays in the family. What does it matter if she got it a little early?" "It matters because she is trying to put me in jail to cover it up," I shouted. "She had me arrested. Mom, she had me fired. She told the police I was unstable, and you stood there and said nothing. You let her destroy my life because you didn't want the neighbors to know your precious Mallory is a thief." Linda began to weep, but it wasn't the weeping of a mother who had failed her child. It was the weeping of a woman who was afraid of being exposed. "Please," she sobbed. "Ariana, please, don't put this in the court record. Think of the reputation. Think of your father's memory. If people know Mallory did this, we will be pariahs." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw a woman who had spent her entire life curating a picture-perfect existence. She had sacrificed truth, loyalty, and her own daughter on the altar of what people think. She didn't love me. She didn't even love Mallory. She loved the reflection of herself she saw in us. And now that the mirror was cracking, she was terrified. "The family name is already destroyed," I said coldly. "Mallory destroyed it when she committed fraud. You destroyed it when you became an accomplice." "Ariana, wait," she begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "I am filing the recording. Mom, I am filing Derek's testimony. I am filing everything. And if you are called to the stand, and you lie, I will let Nina cross-examine you until there is nothing left." "You would do that to your own mother," she whispered. "You aren't my mother," I said. Walking to the door, "My mother would have stopped the police car." I walked out. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove away, leaving the house, the memories, and the illusion of a family behind me. It hurt. God, it hurt. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out with a scoop. But it was a clean pain. It was the pain of cauterizing a wound that had been infecting me for years. The court date was set. Final evidentiary hearing regarding the removal of executor and allegations of fraud. Nina called me into her office for a prep session. The mood was somber. We had mountains of evidence, but we were going up against Grant Sable, and we were going up against a sociopath who had years to perfect her mask. "Here is the reality," Nina said, pouring 2 cups of black coffee. "We have the facts, but facts don't always win in family court. Credibility wins, narrative wins." She sat across from me. "Mallory is going to take the stand," Nina said, "and she is going to cry. She is going to say she did everything out of love. She is going to say the Northline money was for Grandma's secret medical treatments that she didn't want documented. She is going to have an answer for everything." "She is a liar," I said. "She is a good liar," Nina corrected. "And Grant Sable is going to paint you as the vindictive, estranged sister who is trying to cash in. He will bring up your anxiety. He will bring up the job loss. He will try to make you look desperate." "I am desperate," I said. "I am desperate for this to be over." "You have to be stone," Nina said. "When you take that stand, you cannot cry. You cannot get angry. You cannot raise your voice. If you show 1 ounce of instability, they will jump on it. You have to be the sanest person in the room." I nodded. I thought about the 911 call. She is in a state. Mallory was counting on me to be emotional. She was counting on the Ariana who cried at movies, the Ariana who got overwhelmed in crowds, but that Ariana was gone. She had been left on the side of Highway 71 with handcuffs on her wrists. The woman who was going to take the stand was someone else entirely. "I am ready," I said. "Good," Nina said, "because tomorrow, we don't just win the case, we end the war." I went home to my empty apartment. I packed a bag for the next day, a crisp white shirt, black slacks, my grandmother's locket. I stood in front of the mirror. I practiced my face. No fear, no anger, just truth. I was broke. I was alone. I was tired. But I was right. And tomorrow, I was going to make sure the whole world knew it. The oak doors of courtroom 4B were heavy, but pushing them open felt like breaking the seal on a vacuum. Inside, the air was still and cold. This was the end of the line. There were no more maneuvers, no more delays, no more late-night texts, just the judge, the record, and the truth. I took my seat beside Nina. My hands were steady. I had spent the last 24 hours visualizing this moment, breathing through the phantom panic that tried to seize my chest. I looked across the aisle. Mallory was already there, whispering to Grant Sable. She wore a soft gray cardigan and pearls, the uniform of the grieving, burdened sister. She didn't look at me. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Judge Teresa Weller took the bench. She looked tired, her eyes scanning the packed docket before landing on us. She adjusted her glasses, the lenses catching the overhead light. "Estate of Eleanor Vance," Judge Weller said. "We are here for the evidentiary hearing on the motion to remove executor and allegations of fiduciary fraud. Ms. Calder, you may proceed." Nina stood up. She didn't use big words or theatrical gestures. She simply walked to the evidence table and began laying out our case like a mason laying bricks. "Your Honor," Nina began, her voice scraping the silence. "This case is not about a family dispute. It is about a systematic enterprise of theft, fraud, and identity manufacture." She held up the photo of the empty office suite. "Exhibit A," Nina said, "the headquarters of Northline Care Logistics, a company that billed the estate $200,000 for care services. As you can see, it is an empty room with a for lease sign. There are no nurses. There are no logs. There is only a mailbox." She picked up the bank records. Exhibit B, the flow of funds. Checks signed by a woman recovering from a stroke, deposited into an account controlled by the petitioner, Mallory James. She picked up the internal email chain from Harrow and Lyle. Exhibit C, correspondence showing the petitioner's legal team pressuring the fiduciary firm to delay disclosure, explicitly to hide these transactions. Grant Sable objected immediately. Objection: privileged communication. "Overruled," Judge Weller said, her voice sharp. "The crime-fraud exception applies. Mr. Sable, if you were conspiring to hide theft, privilege does not protect you. Continue. Ms. Calder." Nina nodded and sat down. "We have established the mechanism of the theft. Now, we will establish the cover-up." Mallory took the stand first. She walked to the witness box with a slow, measured gait. She swore to tell the truth, her hand resting lightly on the Bible. When she sat, she looked directly at Judge Weller, her eyes wide and brimming with unshed tears. "Ms. James," Grant Sable asked gently, "why did you set up Northline Care Logistics?" Mallory took a shaky breath. "Grandma was proud. She was so proud. She started having incontinence issues 3 years ago. She made me promise not to tell anyone, not the doctors, not the neighbors, and certainly not Ariana. She said Ariana would panic and try to put her in a home." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "So I set up the company to pay for private, cash-only aids. I did it to protect her dignity. I didn't want a paper trail of medical agencies showing how sick she really was." "And the police report?" Sable asked. "Why did you report the car stolen?" Mallory looked down at her hands. Ariana was spiraling. She had been acting erratic for weeks, manic. When she took the car, I was terrified she was going to hurt herself. I thought if the police stopped her, they could get her to a hospital. It was an honest mistake born of panic. I was trying to save my sister." It was a brilliant performance. She took every crime she had committed and repainted it as an act of love. The theft was for dignity. The arrest was for safety. I watched Judge Weller. Her face was unreadable. "Cross-examination," the judge asked. Nina stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She stood right at our table. "Ms. James," Nina said, "you claim Northline paid for cash-only aids. Can you name one?" Mallory blinked. "Excuse me. Name one aide," Nina said. "Just one first name. One person who cared for your grandmother in the last 3 years." Mallory hesitated. "They rotated. It was a service." "You said it was cash only to avoid records," Nina pressed. "So you handed cash to human beings. What did they look like? Were they men? Women?" I don't recall specific names," Mallory said, her voice tightening. "I was managing a lot." "You managed $200,000 in cash payments, but you never met the people you paid," Nina asked. "I trusted the agency," Mallory snapped. "The agency you owned?" Nina asked. "The agency that was an empty room next to a vape shop." Mallory's jaw clenched. "I resent the implication." "I am sure you do," Nina said. "No further questions." Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand. My legs felt heavy, but my head was clear. I sat down. The wood of the chair was hard against my back. Nina guided me through the basics: my name, my relationship to the deceased. "Ariana," Nina asked softly, "let's address the elephant in the room. Do you suffer from anxiety?" "Yes," I said. "I do. Does it make you unstable?" "No," I said. I looked at the judge. "I was in a car accident 3 years ago. I developed panic attacks while driving. I went to therapy. I took medication. I worked very hard to get back behind the wheel. My anxiety makes me cautious. It makes me check my mirrors. It makes me follow the rules. It does not make me a thief, and it does not make me a liar." "Tell the court about the day of the arrest," Nina said. "I had just left the fiduciary office," I said. "I was stopped 7 minutes later. The officers had their guns drawn. They told me I was reported as armed and unstable. I was terrified. Not because I was guilty, but because I knew my sister knew exactly how to hurt me. She used my medical history as a weapon to make me look dangerous so she could take control of the estate." "Did you steal the car?" "No. It is titled in my name." "Did you steal the estate assets?" "No. I was trying to protect them." "Your Honor," Nina said, "I would like to play an audio recording recovered from the decedent's personal effects. We argue for its admission under the residual hearsay exception as a statement of the decedent's state of mind and awareness of the fraud." Judge Weller nodded. "Proceed." Nina pressed a button on her laptop. The speakers crackled. Then, Grandma's voice filled the courtroom. "If they say Ariana is unstable, it is because they need her silent." The air in the room seemed to vanish. Mallory froze, her hand halfway to her water glass. "Mallory has been taking money. She calls them loans. Linda knows. They are afraid of the shame." Grandma's voice was calm, authoritative, and damning. It was the voice of a woman who knew she was being robbed by the people she loved, and who had played a long game to stop it. I watched Mallory. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face had gone rigid, the blood draining from her cheeks, leaving her looking like a marble statue of rage. The recording ended. "We also have the dispatch audio," Nina added, signaling to Elliot Marsh, who was sitting in the gallery. She played the clip. "Caller. She is in a state. You know she is in a state." "That is a colloquialism," Grant Sable argued weakly. "It is a signature," Nina countered. "Coupled with the shell company, the fake appraisal, and the witness testimony of Derek Pruitt regarding the paid access to legal files. It paints a picture of a coordinated conspiracy." Judge Weller held up a hand. "I have heard enough." The cross-examination of Mallory was brief, brutal, and necessary. Nina held up the receipt for the coins. "Ms. James," Nina said. You testified in your deposition that the coins were stolen from the house by Ariana after the funeral. That is what I believed, Mallory said, her voice brittle. Then why does this receipt show you getting them appraised in Columbus 2 weeks before the funeral, under your own name? Mallory stared at the paper. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The lie had run out of road. I was protecting them, she stammered. By claiming you owned them, Nina asked. By hiding them, by blaming your sister. I am the responsible one, Mallory shouted. The mask shattered. Her face twisted into a snarl. I took care of everything. I managed the house, I managed Mom. Ariana was a mess. She couldn't handle money. She would have wasted it on therapy and nonsense. I earned that money. I kept this family together. The courtroom echoed with her shout. Judge Weller looked down at Mallory over her spectacles. The silence that followed was deafening. You earned it, Judge Weller asked quietly, by stealing it from a dying woman. Mallory slumped back in the chair. Realizing too late that she had just confessed, Judge Weller didn't take a recess. She ruled from the bench. In 20 years on the probate bench, Judge Weller said, her voice icy, I have seen greed, I have seen incompetence, but I rarely see such calculated malice. She looked at Mallory. Mallory James is hereby removed as temporary administrator. Effective immediately, all powers are revoked. Ariana James is appointed sole executor in accordance with the addendum. I am appointing a neutral forensic accountant to audit the estate and the Northline entity. Any assets found to be misappropriated will be repaid by Mallory James personally, or deducted from any inheritance she might otherwise be entitled to. Judge Weller paused. She looked at the stack of evidence, the fake insurance claim, the identity theft logs, the burner phone data. Furthermore, due to the evidence of wire fraud, identity theft, and filing a false police report, I am referring this entire file to the Ashford County Prosecutor's Office for criminal review. Grant Sable put his head in his hands. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It sounded like a gunshot. I sat there, feeling the vibration of the wood table under my fingertips. It was over. The siege was broken. Nina squeezed my arm. We did it. Ari, we got her. I looked across the aisle. Mallory was staring at the table, her face blank. Grant Sable was packing his briefcase aggressively, not speaking to her. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I walked out of the courtroom with my head high. The hallway outside was crowded with people moving to other courtrooms, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. I walked toward the elevators. I just wanted fresh air. You think you won? I stopped. I turned around. Mallory was standing 10 feet away. She wasn't smiling anymore. But she wasn't defeated, either. There was something terrifying in her eyes, a cold, reptilian amusement. The judge referred it to the prosecutor, I said. You are going to be investigated. Mallory, maybe even charged. She took a step closer. She lowered her voice to a whisper. Investigations take years. Ari, and I have money you don't know about. I will hire better lawyers. I will drag this out until you are bankrupt. And even if they charge me, so what? A white-collar slap on the wrist. She smiled, then a wide, empty smile that didn't reach her eyes. But you know what the best part is? You lost your job. You lost your reputation. Mom will never speak to you again. You are alone. I have the truth, I said. Truth. Mallory laughed softly. You have a piece of paper, but you still don't know everything, do you? You think Northline was the only secret? You think the coins were the big prize? She leaned in, her perfume cloying and sweet. Grandma hid things from me. Sure, but she hid things from you, too. Go ahead. Take the house. Live in the museum of a woman who lied to both of us. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. Click, click, click. I watched her go. She had lost the battle, but she was trying to poison the victory. She needed me to doubt. She needed me to feel like I had missed something. I went to the house. It was technically mine now. The keys were in my pocket. But as I unlocked the front door, it felt like entering a tomb. The air was stale. The silence was heavy. I walked through the living room, past the empty spot on the shelf where the cookbook had been. I went to the kitchen. Mallory's words echoed in my mind. You still don't know everything. Was she bluffing, just trying to get under my skin one last time I walked into the dining room? It was the room where Grandma spent her winters. Sitting by the heating vent because her circulation was poor. I looked at the vent. It was an old-fashioned floor register. Heavy cast iron. Painted over a dozen times. She hid things in boring places. I knelt down. The paint around the screws was chipped. Someone had opened this recently, or maybe years ago. I used my car key to turn the screws. They were loose. I lifted the heavy grate. A cloud of dust motes danced in the shaft of sunlight. I reached my hand into the dark. Metal ductwork. My fingers brushed against something papery. I pulled it out. It was an envelope. It was charred along the edges, black and flaky. As if someone had held a lighter to it and then panicked, or the draft had blown out the flame. It was addressed to me, Ariana. But it wasn't Grandma's handwriting. It was typed. I sat back on my heels, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I tore the envelope open. The paper inside was brittle. It was a bank confirmation. Not from the local bank, from a bank in the Cayman Islands. Account holder, Eleanor Vance, / trustee. Beneficiary, Elias Vance. I stared at the name, Elias. I didn't have a cousin named Elias. I didn't have an uncle named Elias. My grandfather's name was Robert. I scanned the document. It was dated 10 years ago. The opening deposit was $500,000, and there was a note attached. Paper clipped to the statement. It was handwritten by Grandma. The ink faded. For the boy. Because I couldn't save his mother. Never let Linda know. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor, landing on the dusty rug. The world tilted. Mallory had been stealing $200,000, thinking she was the great villain of the story. I had fought her, thinking I was the champion of truth. But Grandma had a secret that dwarfed us both. Elias. Who was he? A secret son, a grandchild from an affair because I couldn't save his mother. I looked around the quiet house. The walls seemed to lean in, whispering. I thought I had finished the puzzle. I thought I had cornered the truth in open court. But as I sat there in the dust, holding the charred evidence of a life my grandmother had completely hidden from me, I realized Mallory was right about one thing. I didn't know everything. I wasn't free. I was just standing at the edge of a much deeper, darker ocean. I picked up the letter. I folded it. I put it in my pocket. The lawsuit was over. The real mystery had just begun. Thank you for listening to the story of Ariana James. It has been a journey through betrayal, gaslighting, and the hard-won fight for justice. But as we see, sometimes the end of one mystery is just the beginning of another. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Who do you think Elias is? And do you think Ariana should hunt for him, or let the sleeping secrets lie? Please leave a comment down below and let me know where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this saga, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice served cold. Until next time.